Hi, I'm Margaret, and welcome to Garden School. Today, it is chilly, or it was chilly last night. It got down right to freezing, and I could see some frost on some of the leaves outside this morning and some of the ground surfaces. But inside my little 4x6 plastic greenhouse, right now, it is about 52 degrees. It's really lovely, especially with the sun shining in. So that's a great temperature. But what is going to happen when those nights get down to 32 again or below, and they're going to? How can I keep things going in the greenhouse? How can I keep the temperature up, maybe to 40, 45 or so? I'm not going for 60, just into the well above freezing area. Well, there's a couple of practices that you can do, or that I can do, since I don't have power to this little greenhouse. Can't bring in a heater that's electric. But first, let's take a look and see what I've got in here that I'm hoping to keep going over winter, or perhaps just for another month or so. I have a couple little grapefruit trees that were planted from seed just for the fun of it, and they've been looking so nice, and they've been doing so well being outside in the garden during the summer. They appreciated that, and now I want to bring them into the greenhouse to protect them from just the sustained cold and the freezing, below freezing temperatures. Now, citrus can do okay in when it gets to freezing. Not the fruit itself, but I think that these will be okay. And then I've just popped some geraniums in here from containers, and I've got to decide whether I'm going to take cuttings or just let them grow in here for as long as they can. I have a few peppers that I'd like to get a little bit bigger before I harvest them. We'll see if that's going to happen. And then I have some lettuce seedlings, some lettuce starts that I'm going to use for salad. And these can definitely be okay in the cooler temperatures. In fact, they'll do better if it stays cooler, like I would hope around, the 40 would be fine. I have some flower seeds that I started thinking I could give them a little bit of a heads up for the springtime. And I'm going to just hopefully keep them over. Maybe they will just go to dormancy, and we'll see if they make it. I have one Langley pot with some zinnias in it in the greenhouse, just hoping to coax a few more flowers out before the inevitable happens. And then I'm probably pushing my luck, but I have a tomato with two tomatoes on it, and we'll see if we get any kind of color to change on that. Maybe I'll just give up the space to something else. And I brought in this pot with coleus and ipomea just because I wanted to enjoy the color a little bit longer before it goes away to the compost. Now, I've positioned this little greenhouse in the best location I have here in my yard, and it does get a bit of sun. It will get more sun once my apple trees drop their leaves. So I'm kind of looking forward to that, when this will be in a little bit more sun. Now, of course, we're going into a time period where the sun's going to be lower on the horizon and up for fewer hours. So we won't be able to take advantage of, well, we'll take advantage of what we have. Plus, in my climate, Pacific Northwest, we have lots and lots of cloudy days from here until, well, you don't want to know when. So a sunny spot is really a good idea. But a lot of times a sunny spot will also be an open spot, and then you have to consider wind and the effect that wind can have on dropping the temperature, even inside a little greenhouse. So if it could be protected in some way, that would be good too. But there are some things that you can do to try to increase the temperature inside a greenhouse for the winter. Let's talk about those. So I had brought some containers of hot water out last night to just try to keep the air temperature up a little bit more. And while this will work, it will only work to some extent. You've got to, remember to replace water, bring it back up to temperature to bring it out when it's going to get cold. And sometimes I have actually found a little layer of ice on top of the bucket, but it did the work that it tried to do. So water will hold heat, and then as the temperature drops, it can release that heat into the atmosphere. So that's something to think about, whether you want to just do some gallon milk jugs full of water out here, and then as the sun hits them on the sunny days, that heat will be stored in that water, solarization, and then as the temperature drops, it can be released into the mini atmosphere here of your greenhouse. If you have a container and you paint it black, or if it's a black container, that will help absorb heat as well. Now, one thing you do need to remember, these open containers of water are going to increase the humidity here in the greenhouse. And that brings me to another thing, and that is sealing cracks. Like, I got a 1/2 inch gap here on the top of the door, which is really bad when it's cold outside. It does provide ventilation, but the effect of the air coming in from the outside into the greenhouse, that's a big one. So I just stuffed a little towel in here, and maybe that will help. But since I've reduced my ventilation and I've closed the little window, the one window it has, the humidity will build up in here. So I'm going to watch that. If I had a little battery powered fan, I might want to bring that in here to just keep the air moving when I see that the humidity is getting too high, because then we're going to get a great environment for some molds and the things we're not trying to overwinter here in the garage. No, not the garage, in the greenhouse. Now, I did mention the garage accidentally, or perhaps it wasn't accidental, but there may be a point where you say, this, whatever it is too tender. I'm going to bring it into the garage. It's going to go into a kind of dormancy. You reduce the water, and then in a garage, maybe by a window or with some artificial light, it can be sustained over the winter without freezing. Sometimes we can try to do that. It's worth a try if you don't have a greenhouse, or if you don't have room in your greenhouse, or if you know your temperatures are going to get too low. Just bring that plant indoors into a garage area or a shed or something like that for a brief period of time, and then you can bring it back out. One of the ideas that I read about was if I had a larger greenhouse and if I had a bunny rabbit pet, I could bring my rabbit into the greenhouse, the rabbit cage, and the animal itself will provide some heat, but also the manure that it produces will provide some heat. Well, that's something to consider, but maybe for a future time for me. So there was one other idea, and I thought, I think I can do this, and it's not going to be very expensive, and if it doesn't work, it was an experiment, and that is to wrap your greenhouse with bubble wrap. So I'm going to try that. I'm going to wrap it on the inside with some bubble wrap, just like I'm going to just use the stuff that you'd use for shipping, but you can purchase agricultural or horticultural grade bubble wrap that probably will last longer. This is going to be a quick fix for me and a cheap fix too. So let's try it. Well, this project didn't take very long, and I think it's going to work really well to keep the temperatures up just a little bit when it gets pretty chilly. You may want to think about doing something like this on a little greenhouse that you might have, a little cold frame, or a cloche, something like that, where you want to protect something just a little bit more as the temperatures drop. Well, like they say, it's a wrap. There's always more to learn in the garden. Bye-bye.